fronts over the last decade in Vancouver. We also have Jen Nelson coming on to join us for the 420 session, and Jerry Martin will be here for the Martin Medical Moment. Last week on the show, I went over a bunch of reasons why cannabis should not be prohibited, and they certainly shouldn't be using the criminal law to prevent people from accessing it, distributing it, growing it, or possessing it. And I'm just going to reiterate those. There was 9 points last week, but I've added one more. And, you know, it's a pain-relieving, anti-inflammatory, violence-suppressing sleep aid that does so much more than that, especially with its industrial uses. But as a medicine, cannabis is a very powerful medicine. It has less side effects than just about anything else out there. It helps people sleep. It helps people with their appetite. It helps people with pain. And so just as a medicine alone, there should be no criminal penalties for accessing this natural herb. Everybody's got a good reason for having some cannabis on them, and it should be none of the government's business if you do or not. And certainly there shouldn't be any criminal penalties for using it just because of its medicinal value. A second one is that it's a fantastic alternative to opioids and the other hard street drugs. And in a world where we have an opioid overdose death crisis going on, the fact that cannabis, especially in the form of edibles and concentrates, is a really effective replacement for those other hard drugs and opioids, that alone should be good enough reason that there be no criminal penalties for possessing cannabis or growing cannabis or distributing cannabis or any of those types of things. It's a green alternative to fossil fuel. It's many times less expensive to bring to market than fossil fuels are. And we should really be using cannabis for fuel in the place of all of this fossil fuel that we're using, and our footprint would be a lot less, and we'd be a much greener society if we did that. It's also a great substitute for all the wood that we're using for toilet paper, and there's an incredible amount of trees being cut down so people can wipe their asses, and that's obscene when we could be regrowing our toilet paper, and hemp makes fine toilet paper. So just on that one note alone, there shouldn't be criminal penalties for having possession of what is just an amazing industrial tool that nature is providing in the form of a plant. Another reason is that they just don't have enough money to be using the criminal enforcement tools that we have to go after people for having cannabis or distributing cannabis. There's a lot of real pressing issues in our society. There's missing women. There's an opioid crisis. There's a whole bunch of different things that cost money here, and we simply don't have tax dollars that would be available to hire enforcement units or pay police to be worried about whether or not people have cannabis or not. So that's all alone a good enough reason to stop the criminalization of people with cannabis. Another one is the costs and the dangers and the consequences of what happens when you try to prohibit and over-restrict something like cannabis. You're guaranteeing that you're going to have an underground supply. You're guaranteeing that there's going to be an increase in demand. If there's any abuse issues, which there aren't really with cannabis, but there are with many of these other substances that they prohibit, those abuse issues are exacerbated and made much worse because of prohibition. People can't even call the police or go to the hospital when they're having an overdose because they're afraid of the criminal aspect of it. So there's a whole bunch of other consequences that happen out of that, and I'm going to touch on some of those in just a minute. But I wanted to go over this list one more time first. The fact that it's a racist law, that it's been enforced unequally across the different races, and especially the poverty lines, where poor people are much greatly affected by the attempt to prohibit cannabis and restrict its access. So just the racist part of it, the fact that it's about going against poor people and marginalized and minorities, is a perfectly good reason to no longer do anything to do with enforcing the criminal law on people for having possession of cannabis. Another one is the opportunity for corruption. And that's what's happened, and it's very evident that that's happening when you look at the cost of cannabis compared to other plants that farmers produce. It is just absolutely obscene, and there's no reason for it except for government corruption. That corruption runs very deep, and it runs right to the top. And it's very obvious when your government wants to legalize this previously prohibited substance, but the legalization maintains and increases the prohibition prices that was going on there, so that the government thinks that it's okay for them to be charging $12 to $25 per gram for cannabis. And even at $12 a gram, that works out to $5,000 a pound. And there is nothing else being grown out there that fetches more than $10 a pound for the farmers that are growing it. So that price is extremely inflated simply because of government corruption. And because that corruption exists and the opportunity for that exists, we should eliminate that. We should not allow that to happen in our society, where our public officials and public servants can be bribed by huge organized criminal groups, criminal only because they're criminalizing the distribution of cannabis. But there's so much money there that buying a politician is just par for the course, and we should not allow this to be existing the way that it is. And that alone is enough reason to end the prohibition of cannabis and not have any criminal penalties for it. The last one last week is that it's a plant, for God's sakes. It's just a plant. And in a free country with free people and public servants, there certainly is no reason to have the criminal law invoked to keep people from producing what is the most beneficial and the safest plant in our environment. It's simply not, it doesn't jive with what is a free country and what free people. And the one that I'm going to add today is just two words: alcohol and cigarettes. How the hell can we be using the criminal law to prohibit and restrict people's access to be able to possess or disperse cannabis in a world where there are cigarettes readily available in every grocery store and every gas station right across this country, and alcohol is freely available and advertised and not restricted in any way like cannabis is being restricted? So there's 10 good reasons there. And in fact, the one about the cost, the dangers, and the consequences, there's another 10 good reasons in there as well. And that's the one that I wanted to go back to a little bit, because the people that are really getting thrown under the bus with this corrupt system that we have to manipulate the price of cannabis to make fortunes for insiders, the group that's really being thrown under the bus are the police. I mean, there's a few different groups. They're certainly throwing our young people under the bus by lying about cannabis harming the developing brain in a world with alcohol and synthetic pharmaceuticals and other things that harm the developing brain. But the police are really thrown under the bus here for sure. It's not fair to them, you know. I mean, that's not why they became police officers. I have a real good sense. My dad wanted to be a police officer. He was too short, so they wouldn't hire him. But the motivation was there, and the intention was there. And I really do have a sense of what people are like when they want to be police officers, that they start out as kids that play little games with their toys about the bad guys being interrupted and defeated by the good guys, and the kids are the good guys, and they're there to protect the innocent people, and the bullies and the thieves and the robbers, and those people are all harming these innocent people, and the people that end up wanting to be cops are usually people that grew up wanting to be the people protecting the innocent people. And that's not what the job is. And that's what they find out pretty fast. And it's really not fair to them because they're hated for it. And, I met a cop the other day, and he said, nobody likes us because of the job we have to do and the laws we have to enforce, because they're not right and it's not fair. And his brother was a fireman. And he says, everybody loves my brother, but they hate me. And he said, I went into it for the same reasons my brother did. I wanted to help people and be a good person. And that's not the job that they're allowed to do. They're just money collectors for the state. And they're enforcers of especially these prohibitions, which get them a really bad rap because they're just hated for that, because there's no reason for that. You know, if you're a thief and a burglar and you're harming people and you're just a nasty piece of work and you're out there deciding you want to punch people and rob shit, well, when you get busted and go to jail, you're okay with it for the most part, because you did the crime, you do the time, and that's how you feel about it, that you just got caught and you are a nasty piece of work, and these people understand that. And society would all love cops if the cops were just protecting us from those nasty people. If their job was to make sure that you're safe and that you can go ahead and do whatever you want to do and don't do what you don't want to do unless you're harming other people, well, then we would love the cops. I want to like cops. I want to feel like I'm surrounded by warm bunnies and I'm safe as can be whenever there's a cop around, because I wouldn't hurt nobody. And if there's somebody out there that wants to hurt me, well, hey, I got this guy over here that's being paid a good wage. He's being armed to the teeth with all kinds of skills and even guns and other ways of dealing with these bullies and these nasty people. And so I should feel safe when there's a cop around. But I've never been able to feel safe since I started drinking when I was about 14 in Surrey, started smoking weed around 15, doing all the other drugs up until I was about 18. And from 18 on, I just smoked weed. I gave up alcohol when I turned 19 because I was legal to do that. But I've been doing illegal things that harm no one since I was 14 years old. And I've had to look over my shoulders and be really worried every time I see those flashing lights behind me or if a cop's there. And it's no way to feel. I shouldn't have to feel that way in a free country. It really stifles the way that I live my life and the choices that I make, because I'm afraid of the police, and I've been afraid of the police my whole life. And it's not fair to me to be afraid of police because they're supposed to be my servants protecting me. And it's not fair to them that I'm scared of them and that I don't like them and I don't trust them at all. And it's all because of prohibition that's happened to them. It's just not right. You know, we're supposed to live in a free country here. And in a free country, we damn well shouldn't be putting people in cages and having them arrested for things that aren't harming other people or other people's properties. These consensual crimes, like the government makes laws against, but there's no victim involved. There's no one actually being harmed. We absolutely should not be putting people in cages for that. We're supposed to be some sort of a civilized society here, and we should have raised above that a long, long time ago. It's cruel and it's unusual punishment to put people in cages. There better be a damn good reason for that. These better be people that are repeatedly harming other people and other people's property and not willing to stop before we decide that we're going to put them in a cage. I mean, for one thing, it's extremely expensive to put people in cages. It costs us all a lot of money. And is it really doing any good? I mean, the people that get into cages and go to jail, they really don't come out reformed and better people. Most of the time, they come out angry at society, and they've been trained how to be a better burglar or a better thief or a better bully, and they're angrier than when they went in there. If they go in there and they're not diseased and they're there for any length of time, they got a good chance of coming out with some sort of a communicable disease. If they weren't in a gang when they went in, there is a good chance that they're going to be in a gang by the time they get out, because that's how you survive in these places. And it doesn't just hurt the people that are put into cages, and it doesn't just hurt us as taxpayers paying for that, but it really harms their families as well. It's devastating when the breadwinner is put into a cage, and now he can't not only earn money to pay for food for the family, but they can't pay the rent anymore, so they're going to lose the place that they're staying in. And all the rest of it that goes along with it. So there better be a damn good reason before we ruin somebody's life and put them into a cage. There better be a damn good reason in a free country with public servants before we decide to spend public money on putting our citizens into cages and having them come out in gangs, diseased and antisocial, with a ruined family in the wake of it, and trying to recover from that. It costs us such a huge amount in the human toll and the financial toll to maintain cages. And to have cops running around threatening you with cages because you have possession of some herb that you think is going to help make you feel better, but the government says is dangerous, and they need to protect you from yourself and from this dangerous herb. And so they're going to have all their policemen running around with guns and arresting you and putting you in jail. It means we hate the police. It means we don't like the system we live under. It means our public servants are corrupt. And it means that we are not a nice, civilized society that we should be, now that we've had our forefathers go to war and put their lives on the line and take bullets for what freedom is supposed to be. I find it extremely, extremely blasphemous and a slap in the face to these people, these veterans, these people that went to war because they believed in a higher ideal. They didn't go to war just to get a paycheck because they knew they were helping somebody capture an oil field or somebody else's territory. That isn't why they went to war. That may be the reality of it, but you don't go and risk bullets and risk your life for that. You risk your life and take bullets because you think your children's future is at risk if you don't. And you're fighting for their freedom and their rights. And we're disrespecting our veterans, and we're disrespecting all that effort that they put into this by allowing these corrupt public servants to have their way with us. We need to reset our democracy. We need to rethink what it means to be free and have public servants, and what kind of rules and laws are reasonable to enforce, and when and why we would want to put one of our citizens into a cage at great expense to us with very little likelihood that there's going to be a positive result at the other end. But all of this is just happening because of the corruption of drug prohibition, the huge amounts of money that are able to be made off of this amazing beneficial plant that's good for fuel and fiber and food and medicine and so much more, and yet doesn't cost any more to grow than just about anything else. If you try to buy a pound of just about anything else that any farmer is growing out there and dedicating space to, you're not going to pay more than $10 a pound for it. You can pay up to $5,000 a pound for saffron, apparently. But do you know what it takes to get a pound of saffron? A football field full of the flowers that they extract it from. A football field to get 1 pound that they sell for $5,000. You can just imagine how much a football field of cannabis would grow you, how many pounds you would get of that. And at these prohibition prices, what that would mean. Any farmer out there growing anything that you can find in the produce store or in the herb store is getting less than $10 a pound for it. If they were allowed to grow cannabis and its value was to maintain, nobody would be growing anything else. But of course, that wouldn't be the case if we had enough cannabis. But the government is maintaining and manipulating prohibition prices, a false supply and demand economy, so that they can gouge our money, steal from us, continue to lock us up and take our money away from us in the form of fines to protect a monopoly that they've got set up for themselves to sell this plant back to us. And only Trudeau's dealers get to do that for outrageous prices when there's nothing else being grown that's more than $10 a pound. So think about that. Think about how free we aren't. Think about what we should be doing about it and what we might not be doing about it, which means we probably shouldn't be just distracted and entertained, overwhelmed, drunk, angry, confused, and not doing something about it. We need to give our heads a shake, wake up, get real, and realize that our governments are corrupt. We need to do something about that, and we need to demand a reset of a democracy that should be reasonable, and at this point is certainly not. So that's my rant for the day. There's not a lot in the form of news happening, but it was another record year for opium in Afghanistan under U.S. control.
2017. What? So the numbers are up, but not currently.
Oh, so we don't know if this is another record year, but the numbers are up from where they were.
They're still up, and they're booming production, but we don't know if this year...
Uh-oh. Running out of time there. There's the 419 warning, so get ready, folks. We're a minute away. In any case, they're growing a lot of opium. People are wearing poppies in respect of veterans' efforts for freedom, while the government continues to prohibit opium and heroin and those other substances to the point with using the criminal law, increasing demand, guaranteeing an underground market, all the rest that goes with that. And the poppy to me is nothing more than a symbol of hypocrisy and where we're at in this world. Meanwhile, they're now able to grow hemp in New Mexico, and apparently it's growing like weeds there. And the farmers are just over the top thrilled about it because they're getting $20 a pound, and they state in the story there that there's nothing they get anywhere close to $20 a pound for. And of course, hemp is rich in CBD, which is being sold at ridiculous prices by your government stores, but readily available and easy to extract from all the hemp that grows quite easily. And so they're getting $20 a pound for that there. Just one more quick story. Neil Young is having trouble getting his dual citizenship because he admitted that he has used cannabis, and the U.S. government thinks that results in him being of questionable moral character, and not sure if they want to let him go into the land of the free and the home of the brave after having consumed cannabis. So we're still living in an upside-down, crazy world, and there's a little bit of an exposure for you. It's 4:20, so if you got them, light them. And very happy to be joined in studio today with Jen Nelson. She's one of our top volunteers with the CSP. She's joining me today because 8 out of 10 Glenn went to the Saskatoon Prairie Harvest Medicinal Cup. I hear he had a great time. I hear it was an awesome event. But he's on his way back and not going to make it here in time for today. So as I said, very happy to have Jen here with me. And without any further ado, hi Jen. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Got anything to light?
It's in my purse over there.
Oh, okay. Got any fire?
Yes.
You got fire? I'll give you that then.
Cool.
I got this here. We could just share it. Oh, more fire coming too. I got fire on my belt. And Neil, I think I kicked this. This isn't right, is it?
No, that's fine. You're moving them both now.
Am I?
Take the
Yeah.
microphone.
All right. Can't have you here without talking a little bit about CSP.
I talk about
That's
it
been
a lot
fun, eh?
myself. Yes, it has been.
We've been meeting a couple times a week for the last year and 9 months, and once a week for the year before that.
It's been quite a journey.
It's been quite a journey.
Well, it started with me being in the lineup.
Is that how it started? I was just going to ask you that. You were a person in the lineup.
I was.
Did you come and ask me if you could volunteer one day?
Oh, several times. Yeah.
And eventually you got there?
Well, one day I had given my number to Ted, and he invited me over to smoke some, and yeah, we stayed up for a few hours smoking joints and eating honey and other edibles and whatnot. And
Shout out to Ted Scully. Ted in the early days was my head of volunteers, and so that's how you got to Ted. I'm glad you did that. Ted handed that job over to Andrew a long time ago now. And Andrew's been doing just an amazing job as well. I'm hoping to have him on the program one of these days as well. But so have you. I mean, you pretty quickly took the job of packaging stuff.
Yeah. I was a roller for, I don't know how long. I'd say at least a few months. But
One of the holy rollers.
yeah.
It's a long time ago now. I'm having trouble remembering.
Oh, I know. I don't even remember exactly when
Simpler times back then. Was I doing my own packaging maybe?
No, because I remember Mike was helping.
Mike would come in on Sundays, and he would help me put bags together.
And I think Ted was helping you for a while.
Ted probably helped. He helped with everything. He was very good.
And I remember for a while I did it by myself, the packaging.
Yeah, because then you got the job. You were pretty early. I think you were the first one to really get the job. Like you just, you seem to have a feel for how much, should go in the packages based on, how much we figured and you do such an amazing job of that because it's not easy. We've got 200, 300 people.
Well, and plus, even when the line looks short when we get there, it never stays short.
We know that now.
Quadruple.
Lots of people have figured out they don't have to line up early. that they can come even after noon and they're going to be all right. So when I get there at noon and I take the picture, lots of times that's not really representative of how many people we helped at all. I thought about that this last Sunday. I thought maybe I should take a picture now that we're ready to start because this lineup is so much more than what the picture shows. It's intense.
It's almost hard to tell. There's 4 different lineups going on, right?
We got the handicap lineup, we got the family lineup,
the dab
lineup, and the main lineup.
We take up the whole sidewalk.
And it's almost mayhem out there by the time we get started.
I got run over by a wheelchair one day.
It's hard to move through, but they make that work because we make sure that we have people work in the lineup that make sure that there is room for people to pass by on the sidewalk and that they're organized and relatively happy, which I've been very pleased with. I know there is still some incidents. I was told there was one on Sunday before I got there where somebody got punched by somebody for butting in the lineup or slapped or something. But that's rare now. We had, that doesn't happen too often. In the early days, you probably remember, we had some lineup issues. We had to figure out how to maybe not do some things. I had to not announce that we were getting close to the end of our supplies because all of a sudden people from the back would come and start to butt in front. So we keep that a secret right to the end. Yeah. Our donators are amazing, eh?
We still need more.
We still need more.
But it's amazing that we do have what we do.
Yeah, because we're managing to satisfy 300 plus people.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I find it overwhelming actually. It's been mine from the start as far as running the program, but every time I get there, it's like, wow, look at all these people.
Oh, even in the
we
miserable
gonna-
weather, like pouring rain.
Yeah, it doesn't matter, cold,
Right.
wet. And are we going to be able to satisfy all these people and, keep them happy? And yet we do. Yeah, it's been amazing.
Well,
Was there anything?
It's rare, but I'm really happy when we do have stuff left over. Because then I will take extra and hand it out to people that either show up way too late or couldn't make it or whatever else.
I like having some stuff left over. And I get to the point where once we've given out 200 good care packs that, I'm not worried about anything anymore. I mean, we've
I
satisfied.
used to worry about that, though. Because the line
I know.
keeps growing. More and more people keep coming.
I had to understand that we can't help everybody, I mean, when I'm on my way there, if I'm coming down Hastings, I see literally hundreds and hundreds of people that are struggling, obviously, that could use the help that we're providing, but they either don't know about it or they don't think it'll work for them or whatever. But
Or they don't
there's
have
a
the patience for the
lot
lineup.
more. Yeah, they don't have the patience to stand in a lineup for a couple hours, and that's true for a lot of people too.
Well, I've heard some
because
people
that's-
line up at 6 a.m.
Some people
That's
do.
crazy.
It is crazy. And there's others, like I say, that have figured it out. That they don't really have to get there before noon, and they're still going to get a care pack
Yeah.
because we do usually satisfy almost everybody that comes there. So the last maybe 20 people on Sunday just got a Rice Krispie square.
I was going to say,
But
pretty much the only way to
almost-
ensure everybody gets something is if we made smaller packages.
Almost
You get
all of
or
those.
a baked good. But then, that would be a lot smaller
Yeah,
packages.
but almost everybody at that end of that lineup are there coming through for a second time because we let people come through for a second time.
Or they
so-
just show up at the end.
So I think we're doing an amazing job of satisfying. We could use more donations, but the donators that are donating.
And dog treats. We need more dog treats.
Yeah,
we don't get those very often.
We've had
anymore.
good CBD dog treats lately from our anonymous gummy maker.
Oh, that's where those came from.
Yeah. We used to get some from Apothecary Labs.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what's happened with them. So many of these places have had to close up, and their market is gone. There's
It makes
very
me
few.
angry and sad about how this whole legalization thing has gone. 'cause
Oh,
it's
yeah.
not. They only made it legal for the government to sell it. That's it.
I was at Stressed and Depressed yesterday. I drove by again yesterday, and every time I drive by there, they have huge lineups of people, packed to the gills inside. And I went in and talked to them a week ago now, and that was the second time. It was like 10 days before that. So this has been going on for getting close to 3 weeks now at least, that they've been there selling the rest of their stock. Apparently they have their provincial license in hand, but they've been told by the provincial authorities that they can continue to sell until they've sold out of the stock that they have, and then they're
And then
going to
they have to sell
transfer
the
over,
government crap.
and then they won't have huge lineups of people anymore, and they won't have good quality cannabis at decent prices, and they won't have high dose edibles and all the things that they've had up to this point. It's getting really critical out there in finding places to access these things. That's why they're packed all day, every day there. So
Well, and even down here, like you said, that the city had passed a motion that we were supposed to be able to get
we're
affordable
poised-
access to cannabis again, yet the Blue Door is the main thing down here that's
Yeah.
still affordable.
It is. Nothing has opened up in response to the city's motion yet.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, I'm working on it every day, and we're going to do that. And I know there's at least one other group that's looking for a space to rent to do the same thing. And we're very quickly going to transition into that. I might talk about that a little more in the CSP moment. Was there anything that you wanted to talk about on the show?
I don't know.
Oh, that's okay. nothing was burning in your mind that you wanted to get off your chest or anything.
I guess not.
You live really close to where the CSP is. You're right
do.
beside Oppenheimer Park.
I am. I was on the news talking about one of the shootings.
I see. So, yeah, you got a crazy life going on. I see some of your posts about people breaking into your complex and getting up onto your roof where you
Oh,
have
and that
your
guy's
garden.
out of jail and he's back at our building again.
He
Assaulting
doesn't live
people.
there, does he?
No.
But he's just coming in.
Oh, yeah.
He likes your building.
Oh, yeah. Because there's people there that are vulnerable that he's able to easily take advantage of. You know, you did mention something earlier about, the people that are actually hurting people should be the ones in jail. Yet, he was arrested
Yeah, if
for
they
several...
won't stop.
He was, and he won't. Exactly. Like, he was in jail for a few months, and he's out for less than a week and is already assaulting people again. So, and was out without any conditions. Doesn't have to see a probation officer or anything like that.
Why? And how
Well,
do you know all
exactly,
this?
Right? Well, because I'm basically staff where I live, and so they give me all the details.
I see.
But The staff
Can't you have like a picture of his face up on the wall and say, this guy's not allowed?
Oh, yeah. But he manages to sneak in or climb up our building like Spider-Man.
Wow.
Yeah.
Crazy stuff. How long have you been there?
Just over 3 years now.
And you had injuries of some sort, didn't you?
Yes, I was in several car accidents in my early 20s. I was 21.
Were you the driver?
No, I've never even had my license.
Just a bad choice of people to drive with, I guess.
Oh, well, the first bad one, I was a pedestrian. I got run over by a motorcycle.
Wow.
I basically left to die in the middle of the road. I
Holy
almost got hit by another
smokes.
car. But luckily, those people called an ambulance and stayed with me.
Holy smokes. And you have long-term injuries from these things.
Yes,
You use a fair bit of cannabis.
I do. And I wish I
Have
could
you
afford more.
have you determined your optimal dose of milligrams
No.
in edibles?
Because I'm on disability, so I have limited funds, right? Like, my rent is higher than what we get for rent, and
Well, one of our packages, like this package here, has 300 milligrams.
those don't work for me. My
They
tolerance
don't
is too
work
high.
for you. So
I've
they
eaten,
don't
like-
work at all?
I've saved them up and had like 4 packs. Still ate them all at once. Still.
Is there any edibles that we give out that work for you?
Not really. No.
Really?
The one day I got a good buzz was actually on my birthday at Dave Hill's house, where I had tea with a shitload of infused honey and 2 different infused birthday cakes.
But cannabis helps you.
Yes.
Now,
I smoke it mostly. Because, yeah, I haven't really found edibles yet that do work for me.
really?
And that's what I do find hilarious about the 10 milligram
So,
thing with the government. Like,
so
that's
the
nothing to
edibles,
most
I mean,
people.
so cannabis helps you.
Yes.
You mostly smoke it.
Yes.
It helps you when you smoke it.
Yes.
It doesn't help you when you eat it. Like if you eat 400 milligrams, that doesn't help you. Doesn't even, not like
I've
smoking.
eaten over 1,000 milligrams and I still didn't.
And it doesn't help you like smoking, it helps you.
Yeah.
Interesting. Interesting. All right.
I'm a little weird like that.
That's one thing that I've always noticed is that we are all individuals with this, and I get all kinds of stories from all different kinds of people, and there's a huge variety in how they're affected by cannabinoids, from the indica to the sativa and all the rest of that.
Well, that's why sometimes I wish the human body was a little more similar. That way what worked for one person would work for the next.
That'd be interesting. That'd be much more helpful.
Yes.
But we're all on our own individual journey here, and I think it's a lot of mind over matter that we are. Let me put this one in here. I know we've kind of run out of time on the 420 session, so I should be more on it with making sure we smoke these things properly. I got Gibson's glass toker. I love these
I
things.
think most
Gibby.
times I've smoked with you, you talk till it goes out.
Oh, I know.
I do that sometimes too. It happens.
Oh, yeah. So when you eat, like if you ate 4 of these are 300 milligrams per pack.
So
you're eating
1,200
1,200 milligrams.
Plus brownies and cookies.
It doesn't help you with your pain, but do you have an adverse reaction to it?
No. Like most people say, like the jelly blocks that we get, the jelly bombs, that it helps with pain and sleep and like.
Oh yeah,
I'm
most
a little
people.
jealous. I want it to help me with that.
Right.
But I'm happy to help get it to people that it does help. You
Wow.
know?
Very interesting. Well, keep on doing what you're doing. We're going to change what we're doing. Be in a storefront situation before long. But
I wanted to say, I think we should try to get a kitchen in there too. That
oh
way we
yes,
can
we're looking for a
make
kitchen. We
edibles
want to
right
do
there.
things food safe, and all that as well. So that's part of the formula of what we're trying to find for sure.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate you coming in and helping me out with this. Glenn is
Thanks
on
for
the
the invite.
on the road back from Saskatoon.
So it's the only reason I got invited, huh? Because he's not here.
Glenn is my guy for the 420 session. I would entertain the idea of having someone along with Glenn and I. Someone could join him on the couch, and that's fine. It's just a new show, right? They've only done like 12 episodes.
Well, yeah, I got to come and sit and watch once. Yeah.
And I'm going to have you on during the CSP segment at some point, and we'll talk more about the CSP and that as well. It's an evolving show for me, and we'll figure out how to get more people on, but that's what we do. And I'm really happy that you could come and sit there for Glenn today. And thanks for doing all you're doing for the CSP. And you're a force, and I look forward to what things you're going to do in the future to further this movement of having people get proper access to medical cannabis, which our government at this point has been blocking. So you have a big role to play.
Like, I never really used to be somebody that believed too much in things happen for a reason, but I never planned on living down here. Like, I lived in Coquitlam when I got in my first bad car accident.
Right.
And I realized, life kind of takes you where it wants to take you, not necessarily.
And
where
if you
are.
hadn't have come down here, you wouldn't have been part of our project.
Exactly.
You wouldn't
There's
be
a lot of
working,
people I
doing
wouldn't
what
have
you're
met.
doing.
Yeah.
And the future that is ahead of you wouldn't be happening the way it's happening.
So it sucks. I
believe in a
badly
lot of
injured
that.
to end up down
You know,
here,
most of
but
my
here we
guests,
are.
most of my guests that I've had on as we explore the early beginnings of how they ended up here, is got to do with the epiphanies, with the things where it could have gone one way and it went the other way, or something that happened. And I do think that those things are part of a greater design where people have a destiny, and you can try to get off your track, but you do have a destiny that you'll be nudged back onto, as you go. And that seems to be the case. I don't know. We live in a strange universe full of consciousness and energy, and I'm not sure how it all works, but I know it doesn't all work like, black and white. There's a lot
But
of
I feel
other
like I've
things
been
going
happier
on.
since I've kind of just let life take me where it wants to.
Well, I'm glad it took you to where you are, and I look forward to more in the future, and thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
All right.
Take a look.
I will. 420 session always gets me in a good mood for the rest of the show. Coming up on the program is the Martin Medical Moment. And this is a segment of the show where we talk more about the access to medical cannabis. That's pretty much, our theme is freedom and the abuses of public servants with respect to that freedom. But of course, our lead issue is about the blocking and restricting of access to cannabis. And that's, of course, the most obvious example of how we're not free and how our government is corrupt. And in the case of medical cannabis, the people that are using cannabis for medical reasons were getting access through illegal dispensaries that were popping up all over the place. This is going back several years ago now. We had about 150 or more at one point here in Vancouver, none of them licensed. All of them contrary to the criminal code and federal law, but providing access to people to cannabis that were using it for medical purposes. There were movements through the courts. We had well over a dozen court challenges, winning all of them along the way, I must say. And part of that was the Allard case, where people were fighting for their right to continue to grow cannabis for themselves, as the new regime being brought in by the federal government was going to take away that right. And in that decision by Judge Phelan, he declared that the medical storefronts were crucial to access for medical patients getting cannabis for medical purposes, and that they were at the heart of access for people. And so yet here we have a federal government that has decided to legalize cannabis. And in their legalization model, cannabis is for non-medical purposes. And they're wiping out and making sure that all of the medical dispensaries are closing so as not to be an unfair competitor to the government non-medical stores. And it is absolutely unconscionable, and it's outrageous. It's contrary to the will of the courts and the will of the people. And that's what's been happening. And now, in this fight, several years ago, when things were heating up with respect to dispensaries popping up all over the place, in Whitewood, Saskatchewan, a small town halfway between Regina and Brandon, Manitoba, there was a gentleman that was wanting to give back to his community and saw that as an opportunity to help people and opened a dispensary and successfully ran that dispensary for 3 or 4 years, having about 1,000 membership base in a town of about 1,000 people. And using strict guidelines ascribed by Health Canada with respect to how people should get access, with respect to having doctors on board and things like that. And yet, after warnings from Health Canada and staying open because that's the logical thing to do, he was arrested and had his property seized and has now been 3 or 4 years waiting for an actual day in court, not in possession of many thousands of dollars worth of properties and things that were seized from him, and threatened constantly with going to jail for his role in helping people who are sick and suffering get access to a medicine that worked for them in a world where the government was restricting that for no logical reason. And it's been a horrible plight to see, and I'm sure, and I know worse than that to endure. But here we are, still waiting for a court date, and I'm very privileged on this show to be able to have Jerry Martin come and visit us every week and give us an update on where he's at and what's going on with him as we follow him and a few other cases that are going through the courts at this point to challenge what the government is doing. So with no further ado, how you doing, Jerry?
Doing good. How are you, Neil?
Good. I'm glad to hear you're doing good. So what's new?
You know,
With the case, there's not much new.
there's not much new with the
You're
case.
just in
you know,
limbo
it's
waiting
in
for,
waiting still, yeah.
For them to announce a court date? Is that what's next?
Yeah, pretty much. I think they've said, I think they've gone ahead and agreed on the statement of facts because we pushed
Right.
back at them. They want
Okay.
to fly with the witnesses. And
They are going to fly out the witnesses?
no, they decided to back down with that because we were going to put up a bit of a fight. So yeah, I guess we're going to agree.
Let me clarify that. They said they weren't going to fly out the witnesses, and now because you were going to put up a fight, they are.
No, the opposite.
The opposite of
They
that.
tried to make me spend more money, make it more difficult.
I see.
But we put up a little fight for that. So they've agreed to this, what they call an agreed statement of facts, is that I sold cannabis from this period of time to that period of time. I was in possession of of this amount of cannabis or whatever. Yeah, just basic facts that I would agree to anyways. I think they were pretty blunt that I was selling cannabis. So
Yeah, you were open about what you were
yeah,
doing.
and it just saves a pre-trial. However, this does seem to have taken a whole lot longer than a pre-trial would have.
And still no date set, so you're going to have to
No.
go back to court when they summon you back to set a date.
Right.
And they're still waiting for that to happen.
Yeah.
That's disgusting.
And from what I hear, there's another constitutional challenge going on in Saskatchewan, and that makes me a little nervous and Paul a little nervous. I don't know who the lawyer is, who the case is, but apparently this is going
about that
on.
one. Sarah McNeil's got hers going on in
Yeah, so
Alberta.
apparently
That's
there's
gonna be a
another
red
one,
deer.
and we don't know about it, and that's probably not the best.
Well,
'Cause
Chris
if they
Enns is
lose-
back in court tomorrow morning at 9:30 in Nova Scotia. That's 9:30 Nova
Apparently it's the
Scotia time.
Saskatchewan that's going to matter, though. Because if they lose, it's not going to look very good. If they win, it'll help. But, yeah, so we've got
I got to be
going
careful
on.
about setting bad precedents.
Right, so we've got that on our plate now, and now we don't know who it is. Of course, that's a little more worrying. But hopefully they do well, whoever they are.
And I just want to mention Heidi Chartrand is also in court tomorrow morning in Nova Scotia at 9:30 in Kentville, or did it no?
Sackville?
No, darn it! I had it. Where did I put that? It's on my notes here. I want to make sure I get that right. They really would like to have people in the courtroom there. Oh yeah, it's going to be in here. That's all right. I'll be organized shortly. But yeah, these court dates, Annapolis, Nova Scotia. I think they're keeping it there, even though there's restricted handicapped access. But yeah, there's a few things going on in the courts, and we'll see what shakes down with that.
Right.
In the meantime, you're just hanging in there. You've got a new project. How's that going with that?
Good. Actually, it's now legal. So.
And this is an analog of LSD in a
one-
microdosing form.
That's correct, 1P LSU. So it's totally legal in Canada. It's not
Right.
in the criminal code whatsoever.
Cool.
Honest.
Cool.
However the mushrooms are. But that's okay. It's a Schedule 3, and I think
So the
Vancouver's,
mushrooms are not as legal.
not as legal. They're Schedule 3 here, so they're not even as bad as, say, cannabis would be.
And here in Vancouver, one of the councillors, Melissa DeGenova, put forward a motion to not allow for mushroom dispensaries.
Correct.
And that motion was squashed.
It was. So that opened up the doors.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And that's going on in other places right now in North America.
Yeah,
Chicago is
Denver,
about to
Oakland.
pass a bill. Oakland already has. Denver already has for psychedelics.
Yeah. For all,
So,
some of them for all psychedelics too.
Yeah.
Not LSD particularly, but all natural psychedelics.
Well, and actually, LSD is probably natural too. I mean, it
What's it
occurs
now?
naturally in nature there, and
Well, it's,
You know.
yeah, developed by Albert Hoffman, I think, in '38.
well, discovered. It was part
Discovered.
of the
I think
part
he
of the
more
mold.
I think he made it in '38. He more discovered it in '43, I think it was, when he got some on him.
And not much in the way of fatalities to do with LSD either. Eh?
No, I did hear about an elephant that they gave like 10 million doses to or something retarded.
Oh, who does that?
And they freaked out and died. Oh. But it's like the video they show you in school still to these days with them dropping the acid dropper onto the spider. You don't think that's going to fuck somebody up if you put a whole bucket of acid on
man.
I mean,
To be used with caution for sure.
If you used it in a microdose, I'm sure that spider would have created some nice webs.
Have you had... yeah, exactly. Eh? And is there... you haven't been doing this very long with having available the microdosing of acid. Are there any reports coming back from people that are using it? Is there success, failures, problems?
So it's still fairly new. It's going to take them 6 to 12 weeks to get. Haven't had any bad reviews. That's good. And we've had repeat orders, so nice. That's good as well. Cool. And now open the doors up to places like the U.S. and things like that, where it is legal. And there are warnings, it's not for human consumption and things like that. But they are welcome to purchase a bottle to put on their shelf as a reference, we could say.
I see.
Yeah.
Well, it's a weird world anyway, so maybe people will.
Stay within those laws they make.
I saw that there was a thing on Facebook about how the way that LSD, reconditions some of the processes within the human brain.
Right.
And if used therapeutically, if used with respect, I think these things are all of value to some people, and I certainly don't think it's any government's right. Especially in a free country, but even at any point, it's not anybody's right to tell another human being that you can't try something that may or may not be of value to you. So it's all just crazy.
Yeah, it's just a controlled drug market by the pharmaceutical companies and the governments.
It's about controlling people.
The real cartel.
Yeah, and so much money over people is the real issue. Yep. So. Yeah, well, onward we fight, eh? Thanks for coming and talking to us about it again, and we'll continue to follow what goes on.
Yeah, I'll see you next week, we hope.
Yep. And
you never know.
Yeah, just keep your chin up as best you can. And try to have more good moments than bad moments, I guess.
Those are rough.
There we go. Thanks, Jerry. Really appreciate it, and keep fighting the good fight. Just crazy that we have to fight our own governments for what we're doing here. And Jerry's been at the forefront of one of our battles with our own government. They're spending a whole bunch of money to come after Jerry, and it's our money that they're spending. And I'm not sure what they think the value to us is. But it is absolutely ludicrous for sure. It's a criminal misuse of our public funds that they're doing what they're doing. So anyway, next up on the program, of course, is my main guest, and I'm very thrilled and honored today to have what has been absolutely the quiet force behind what is medical cannabis distribution in Vancouver here, but far more than that. Dorie Dempster has been the brains and the ethics and the morals and the person setting the standards for how medical cannabis should be dispensed through Dana Larson's Medicinal Cannabis Dispensary. And they are, in my opinion, were and are at the top of the heap with respect to the care taken to make sure that people were getting a quality product, and those that need it for medical reasons were able to trust the information that they got and the cannabis that they got. And it is a horrible, horrible blight on our city and on our country that they have been using our tax dollars and enforcement to shut down the fine efforts of this dispensary and other dispensaries. And that's why I'm very happy to have Dorie on the program to give us a little insight into her life and what the Medicinal Cannabis Dispensary has been doing and what it's meant to the neighborhood and community that they've been in, and what she feels about the recent shutdown of her ability to do that. So hi, Dorie.
Hi, Neil.
Really good to have you here.
Thank you.
It's we got some time, so we're not going to delve into anything important right away. I want to know a little bit about you and how you got to be here and the journey in between. You and I have known each other for quite a long time. You arrived in Vancouver, and I want you to tell me about that, where you were before and what led to you coming here.
Well, I was on the Sunshine Coast raising my 3 sons, and when the opportunity came to come and work for Dana at Vancouver Seed Bank in 2005, I came here and ran the mail order department for 3 years and shipped useful seeds around the world, and got to understand how mail order works and that kind of stuff, and got to do a couple of herb school tours. And
So when I met you, you were here working at the seed bank.
yes,
Because that's what you did right away when you came here. And those were early days for activism here in Vancouver with respect to the new wave of activism. So what year was that?
2005.
2005. So 420 wasn't a very big thing, but the seed bank was a big part of helping us put that on.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so you worked there for 3 years. And we had the Sunday Club, a group of a number of us that would get together and do crazy things and go to parks and smoke weed in public, and that was a lot of fun. You met Tim
Yep.
through the Sunday clubs, and he's been at your side a long time now, ever since.
Be 14 years this Christmas.
Nice. And so when did you go from working at the seed bank to working at the medicinal cannabis dispensary?
Well, I had a little time off at the beginning of 2008, and before I was able to really go back to work, Dana called and said he had decided to open up this dispensary, and would I come and be his receptionist. There was going to be an in and out door, and he was going to be behind the door, and he was going to sell the cannabis to the people that came by, and I was going to check them all in at the front. And that was October the 6th, 2008, and I asked, when should I get there? He said, well, we open at 11, and I've got people coming by from the seed bank to do a dry run, so if, come at 11. So that's when I asked if all the paperwork was ready for me, and he asked what paperwork. So it sort of began right from there. We just started with a clipboard, and I put myself down as number 1. And I had an MMAR license at that time, so that was a Health Canada license. And I knew
You
that
guys
my
were doing
people
things
qualified.
by the book, basically, with respect to what Health Canada you thought that they would require and that sort of thing, much like the Compassion Club, right?
Well, it was not quite what Health Canada's requirements were, but it was very strict, and we were strict about the collection of the information that we had, because we were just the 3rd dispensary opening up in the city at that time.
And there was a protocol, code of conduct put together by Philippe Lucas and Riel Kapler that the Compassion Club had orchestrated and was using, and you guys adopted that pretty much as well, right?
Well, at the BC Compassion Club's invitation, people were able to copy their paperwork because it had worked for them for that many years so far, and so they suggested that it was a good starting point. Put your own name and address on there and modify a couple of boxes, but this is what was working for them, and it just seemed reasonable at that time. Right. I had become a member of the BC Compassion Club in the year 2000, and so they had taught me about the difference between what I was smoking.
That's when you were living in Salt Spring, right?
Gibson's. In the Sunshine Coast. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So they had already taught me about what was in my bag and how I could discern the different effects of it and how I could apply that to my particular condition. And so I also had been booked in by Hillary herself, and she impressed upon me the importance of having respect for the neighborhood and respect for schools and the children and other businesses, and that was a part of.
Because they're right across the street from the school, actually.
Yes, and so as a member there, it was very strict on how we were to present ourselves in the neighborhood, and so I had already been a member there for 8 years.
Should I back up a little bit? How did you become a member of the Compassion Club? And was there something where medical reasons, obviously, and you had an MMAR. How did you become involved with cannabis? It's probably a question I should have asked earlier on.
I started using cannabis about 16 and had been just using it just as weed. And as, I knew that it made me feel somewhat good, but I didn't understand how to use it properly. Didn't like the effects of alcohol. But sometimes cannabis didn't make me feel so good. But I knew that it made me feel better than pills and alcohol, so
you used it from 16 on until you had 3 boys?
Mm-hmm. And even then I didn't use when I was pregnant with my first one, but I did use cannabis when I was pregnant with the twins. Mm-hmm. And it was a much happier pregnancy using cannabis. I smoked cigarettes in the first pregnancy. And I now that I understand the difference between the two substances, I think I made a much better choice with the twins.
If you'd have known then what you know now, you might not have smoked cigarettes during the first pregnancy, but that's,
Right. But anyways, after the children were born and I had been using cannabis and their dad and I weren't getting along, and it was time for us to split, it was very apparent that cannabis was going to be used, my cannabis use was going to be used against me in my ability to continue being a parent to my children. And so
you decided to get legal as you could for that, right?
Yes, because divorce court was coming along, and I was going to have something to back me up.
Right.
And
I see.
And so that was when I got introduced to the club. Oh, it absolutely was, because they my kids had never been afraid of me before. Yeah. But when they pulled them out of school and told them that your mommy's doing drugs,
that must have made you a little bit angry at the system.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
is that part of what drives you a little bit?
Oh, a little bit, but you got to be careful about being angry, because as soon as you show that you're angry, now you're going to be labeled, and they're going to,
That's right.
Yeah, they're going to use that against you, and pretty soon you're not going to be able to parent your kids because you're angry.
I'm more talking about the underlying motivation that has led you to take a job at the seed bank, for example, which was, not as risky about getting busted as the medicinal cannabis dispensary, but the seed bank did live with that threat over their head all the time, knowing that they were supplying cannabis seeds in a world where, So, I was more fishing a little bit for the underlying motivation to you taking a job like that in a world, in a place where there was that risk, and then moving on to do what you did with Dana's dispensary, because there you're really flouting the federal law for sure. You lived in risk at the medicinal,
Sure, it was a risk, but the underlying motivation to normalize the plant and to make it possibly so that other parents and children didn't ever have to be dragged through the dirt and the mud my children
that's what
and
I was thinking was part of your thinking on that.
And I wanted to make it so that parents could be honest with their children and tell them that this is mommy's medicine. And
it shouldn't even be a question. You really shouldn't have to have much of a discussion at all. You don't go to the medicine cabinet, with your 4-year-old down there and take your pills out and have to explain the pills to the kid. These are just, sometimes you might, but they're just making such a big deal about the use of what is just a herb that helps people feel a little bit better in a lot of different ways. It's really such a tragedy, as you well know, and if you get me going, and away I'll go, I'll do little mini rants and stuff, but sometimes sometimes it's not.
But people do talk to their children about medicine, and it was important that I had talked to my children about my medicine, and when I was smoking, mommy's smoking her medicine. That's the only explanation really I gave them. But when
the other explanation that you could give them is and by the way, there could be an issue if you happen to tell your teacher that I'm using this particular medicine, because that's the other real fear about it that you don't have with the other medicines is that, Tommy, you can't somehow, you can't be telling us. A lot of parents get into trouble and lose their kids because their kids went to school and said, my mommy uses that. And they're tricky, those bastards going in there and,
Well, they did that to my kids when they pulled them out of school. They said, does your mommy smoke in the van? And the children said, no, my mommy doesn't smoke when we're in the van. My mommy smokes before we get in the van. And so they said,
in which case you're glad you were smoking cigarettes. But,
well, they said,
I know.
You know that your mommy isn't smoking cigarettes and your mommy's smoking drugs.
Yeah.
And that was the very first day that those children were afraid to get in the van with
It's
me
horrible.
after school.
You know, it's just horrible that they turn children against their parents and use the children to get at the parents and all the rest of that. I agree. It's very horrible. So the medicinal cannabis dispensary. You tested everything. You looked at everything through a microscope. You got pretty serious about who you were helping and how you were doing things there. I think you set the standards and set the bar for what it is to be a medicinal cannabis dispensary.
I like to think so, because we have a very strict quality control department. We get a lot of flack out there on the market for how strict we are.
From people wanting to supply you, you mean that
Yeah.
they don't meet your standards?
Yeah. And they think that we're being
Well, that's all right.
unreasonable.
As long as you get what you need, it's all right.
We've never had an issue with keeping enough supply on the shelf, good
Right.
supply. Sometimes people say, you don't have any of that frosty stuff. But often that frosty stuff, when it comes in and people are bragging up to us that they got quads today, we find 4 major things wrong with it. And we always snicker about quads because generally they never make it, because that
When you say quads, what do you mean?
When the buyers or the vendors are coming and they're selling their packs, the quads are the
Is that a 4-pack or something?
No, it's the 4-star. Quads meaning like 4-star,
4-star. Okay.
and it's the top shelf.
Okay.
And when we pull the microscope out and we look, it's got mold and it's got some dog hair all through it, or it's got mites, it's got crawling things on it. And the generally the frost that they're so braggy about is powdery mildew. So
Wow.
soon as we put it under the scope, it's just like, well, that fails.
When you put it under the scope, do you see damage to trichomes and resin glands?
Absolutely. So you can see if something's been tumbled and all of the trichomes are knocked off the
The
top.
heads are all gone.
Mm-hmm. You can see that they've been damaged, that they're all black maybe because they've been sprayed, and
Right.
and it's it's not happy. You can tell looking through the trichomes whether it's immature, just ready, or over mature, depending on the color of what the trichomes are.
Right.
And that changes how people experience it as well.
Mm-hmm.
If it's picked early, everything's all clear. It's very bubbly and short lasting. Not a very good medicinal product. It's good for those people that like to get high quickly but then have it go away. Those that are looking for the long term, they're looking for something that has more of the amber in the trichomes.
How important is the curing process?
Essential.
Essential.
If you don't cure it properly, you can ruin your entire time of growing.
Are you able to tell if it's cured properly by looking at it and putting it under the scope and those sorts of things?
There's a lot, yeah. You just
And
smoke
do you
it.
then cure it yourself once it comes into your possession at all?
When it comes into my possession, at home,
Yeah. Well,
yes. Tim and I have a process when it comes out of the plastic bags and it goes right into
But I meant
glass
more
jars.
within the dispensary itself. You just pretty much, you're selling it pretty quickly anyway. There's not much time involved. It's already cured, or should be, to the right point for sure.
If it's wet, we can't process it. That's supposed to be done previous. So when it comes in, we want to be able to package it and put it onto the shelf. And if people want to cure it for longer periods of time, that's really up to them. And it does change the flavor. It mellows out harshness.
Yeah.
Often brings in spicy flavors, and the color will change from green into golds. And so lots of things change when you keep it in a jar for a couple of years. And we've got some stuff like 2015 still in jars.
Nice.
Maybe even longer.
Must be nice to have special occasions at your house, I can imagine. There's quite a difference in cannabis between the different strains, from the indicas, which are relaxants in most cases, to sativas, which are more of a stimulant in most cases. You must get a fair bit of feedback from people. Is that consistently the case, that indicas are relaxants and sativas are stimulants, or is there, what sort of variations go on?
I was just talking about this with my counselor, and that very thing is that, for the most part, people are grounded by the indicas and uplifted by the sativas.
Yeah.
But what we find is people that have a condition that is causing them to be maybe speedy, so like ADHD, we've got this hyperactivity disorder. If we were to go to the pharmaceutical world, they would be giving them a stimulant, even though they're already stimulated.
Right.
It's like fighting fire with fire.
I see.
And often those people, the same thing happens with their cannabis use.
I see.
So if they think like, it's not working for me, try doing it the other way.
Right.
And just
Because I've certainly had people tell me that the opposites are true for them.
Yeah.
So, and you would have a lot more experience with respect to that. You've seen a lot of different medical conditions helped by cannabis. What's touched you? I mean, I've seen people get up from their wheelchairs and go, I haven't stood in years, and here I'm getting out of my wheelchair because I just know I can, because I had a dab with something. I've seen that so many times. Is it a daily thing that people come in and,
I'm not in the store every day, so I'm not getting the same kind of interaction every day that my staff are now.
Right.
But I still I'm the one that goes to the hospital now. I'm the one that does home visits.
I see.
And it's touching into these cases in a completely different way when you're called to Children's Hospital
Right.
to sit with a parent and try to explain the medicine to them, and because they get bombarded. There's so many people want to help, but they come forward with suggestions that really aren't helpful, because the parent's sitting there and they say, how do I give this to my 6-month-old baby? And they
Yeah,
So
they
you
would
have-
absolutely need some guidance with that.
so you
I
have
can
to be able to have a medicine that's very versatile, that we're going to be able to use on this baby and help it that way. And then sometimes it's because they're fighting a cancer. Another time, the children, it was called because the hospital said there's nothing we can do. Nothing we can do. You need to take your 9-year-old child home and make her as comfortable as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And so the parents say, well, what about pot? And they say, well, it's not going to harm her. So, give it to her in whatever quantities you want. It's fine. It's not going to hurt her. And that weighs on you, when you sit and you look at, the siblings of that child, and they're trying to play and have a normal life, and there's all of this stuff going on, and, it's tough, but it's life, and it is what's happening in our world, and it's not something that I want people to think that it's just all horrible, because it's not.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of joy and hope out there, and a lot of people living while they're dying.
That is kind of the point.
And and there's been a lot of people that have had their lives changed, and like you said earlier, we can't fix them all, we can't save them all. We can just do the best that we can while we're here with what we've got. And
so 11 years or so for the Medicinal Cannabis Dispensary. How many members?
We're in the 8,000 registered members at this point. The registered members department hasn't been very active these days because of the way that legalization has gone. A lot of people largely feel that there's no need for them to have a membership. and it's I don't want to do the paperwork, and it's
And you guys went to from requiring a doctor's confirmation of diagnosis to allowing just people over the age of 19 to access. And that was in response to basically the city's regulations, where they didn't really require for their dispensaries that you have a doctor on board, basically, right?
No.
That's not what that was about?
No.
Okay.
No, that decision was made at a conference at the Weston Bayshore when I was watching Hillary Black on stage with Kirk Tusaw, and they were talking about how the BC Compassion Club had opened up access for all of these people and had changed the way that medicinal cannabis was viewed. And I was standing there feeling that line where you talked about like almost like Health Canada, and that when I realized how close we were to Health Canada's requirements, it disturbed me, because during the 7 years that I had been doing this work, I had been gathering the evidence that that we have a shortage of doctors. We have a shortage of doctors that understand about cannabis and are willing to sign, for this as a medicine. I'm sorry, just sort of lost track there.
But there's just not enough access for medical patients to get the services required here.
Right, thank you. During that same conference, a lady came to me. She's 70. Just this beautiful lady, like just looking like a goddess walking across, and she asked me how she can become a member of my dispensary, and I start to explain and tell her about this doctor's note that I need, and she says, well, I can't actually get you a doctor's note. And I was like, okay, so you're well. And she said, I'm well because I use cannabis. I've been making really good choices all of my life, and this is the result. And I'm looking at her and I'm thinking, like, how can I argue with this? Mm-hmm. She knows what's good for her. Yeah. And yet my rules make it so that she can't be a member and choose preventative wellness for herself, and there's something inherently wrong with that. Yeah. I stood there and I started to think about the man that used to be a member that would push in another man that had no legs. He'd push him in a wheelchair. The man in the wheelchair couldn't get a membership
because his doctor wouldn't sign for him.
But the man that was pushing him in couldn't help himself but say every time, hey, what do you want from up there? And we'd say, hey, you can't do that. We got to kick you out for doing that. And, and it just becomes ridiculous when you're working with a non-toxic plant that is not harmful to pets, it's not harmful to newborns, it's not harmful to your grandma. Why do we have to have this set of rules that makes it so that it's so that people who are dying don't get to have the fine medicine that we've picked, especially for people like that? Because
you didn't ever hurt anybody in all of the time at the medicinal cannabis dispensary, did you?
Not that I'm aware of.
Yeah, exactly. Nobody, and if you had, you would think that, they'd be all over it, You've harmed me, I've got some serious long-term medical issue now because the cannabis you sold me, No, there's just nothing like that.
No, but there is a long lineup of people that are saying this helped me.
Oh yeah. This situation is exposing how deep the corruption is in our country here. Wow. And I hope that mainstream media and everybody jumps on this and understands and recognizes just how wrong this is. I've been harping about the fact that there's no produce or medicinal herbs that you can buy out there that are more than $10 a pound. There just isn't. And yet this one plant, as easy to grow as heirloom tomatoes or most other things, is just priced astronomical, like thousands of times. This is like the whole tulip thing back in Holland in the 1600s, where one tulip bulb could be worth 10 times a skilled person's salary for a year. Until one day they all just kind of gave their head a shake and went, what? It's a flower, for God's sakes. And in this case, sure, it's a very valuable flower. It does so many wonderful things. People are willing to pay huge amounts of money for small amounts of it, if they can't get it. But that doesn't mean that it's right that a plant that grows like any other plant should cost that much. It's just insane. But it's way worse than that with what's going on with you, because you have this amazing track record of not only not hurting people, but I can just imagine how many thousands of the 8,000 people that you've helped could testify to the extreme value that cannabis has in their life. Mm-hmm. And that if it wasn't for you, they wouldn't be able to access it in reasonable ways. And yet here we are now. I'm just outraged, to be honest, Dorie. I'm really having a very hard time keeping my emotions at bay about them deciding to shut you down. I was so pissed that you had to stop the one location, in a good location for people to get access in a neighborhood that really needs access, mm-hmm. and they made you close that one down, but they let you keep the other one, so it wasn't quite total outrage, because we can just send people up there. And I knew that Dana was in queue, or you guys are in queue to get the provincial license, because that's the only way they're going to let you keep doing anything without fear of some fucking bad raid or something. And yet here they come in anyway and block access to your customers. And in their mind, they were blocking access from that moment on. They didn't expect you to reopen to help anybody. They were shutting you down at that moment. And for what? I mean, I'm just, it's a whole bunch of things, because the city passed a motion allowing for low barrier access to cannabis to fight the opioid crisis. That's what you guys are. That you couldn't be more what it is that they're saying they're going to support. Right. So obviously the CSU doesn't give a shit about what the city says. I don't think they ask them. They just decide that you're on their list, and they're coming in and they're going to steal all of your stuff and shut you down. Yep. And I saw all the patients and clients of yours coming to try to get in there. I mean, some of them, from the hospital next door with their IV in tow, and cancer patients so upset, and where am I going to get my medicine now, in tears about it. They're not protecting anybody except these government investors, and people that are investing in Trudeau's monopoly scheme. That's the only people being protected by these people, and they're hurting a lot of people by what they're doing. And I'm so upset about this. I'm not sure what to do about it. I went and yelled at the cops for a day. I got some of that off my chest. I felt like they got the message, that they shouldn't be helping the CSU, that they should be telling the CSU to get the hell out of our city. I'm not sure what I'm going to do next if they keep, shutting down you. If they shut down you again, I want to know immediately. We'll gather our forces. We'll yell some more, but we're going to have to do more than that. We need the media to really understand what's going on here. Yeah.
But yelling at the police, that's not gonna fix anything in this situation, because what I know about the role of the police in this situation is they are there to just keep the peace. And when I had my little interchange with that man, and he said that, they're there to protect him, I reminded him, they are supposed to be here to protect me. There's nothing for you to be afraid of here, sir.
That's for sure.
But the police role is only that, to make sure so that, nobody crosses any lines. He crossed a line. He reached out to touch me,
saw that video.
And he crossed a line. And he shouldn't have crossed that line.
I just want the VPD to tell them to get the hell out of our city, to protect our dispensaries, and to protect what we've fought so hard for here.
But if the VPD aren't there keeping the peace, then it'll be the RCMP that'll be coming in, and it'll be their job.
And they're worse than the VPD for sure at standing there.
I mean, I would rather
I get that point of view that you're saying, that VPD guy was there more to make sure these guys weren't going to do more than they should to you.
Now that VPD officer didn't know who we were. He's just like, he's got to remain neutral. I get it now. But what I know is on the street, those officers know that we aren't doing harm in this city.
Oh, they do.
And that the police
We had a lot of
force doesn't believe
sympathetic
that
comments from those
harmful.
VPD that day.
Right.
I yelled at a lot of VPD, and a lot of them would answer me back and say, "Hey, man, it wasn't me." And I said, "You're wearing the uniform. You're wearing the decision today. They're making you look bad." I also wrote a long letter to one of the deputy chiefs who I've had an email relationship with since I started the Cannabis Substitution Project. He hasn't answered me back since the second to last letter that I wrote him, but I was basically accusing them of murder because of shutting down the 420 Farmers Pop-Up Market. And this time too, I said, I guess your department isn't aware of what our city has passed in the way of a motion, and that they should be protecting your ability to continue to serve the community, not helping the CSU shut you down. So we'll see what transpires here in the near future. You guys are back open,
We opened at 4 o'clock that day.
right?
My team went straight to work, filling up some bins and getting them delivered. And we started out with a limited menu, just like we did way back in the day.
2 weeks ago now, right?
Yeah. But we've been quickly able to get a nice selection back on the shelves. We've had a very generous donation from Weeds. Stocked us right back up in our jelly bombs that are so very popular and such good medicine for people.
Exactly.
And then now the makers of those jelly bombs has also agreed that they will replace everything that was stolen off of our shelf by CSU.
I don't know if it's one of
and
the...
that's Twisted Extracts.
Okay, so it is the same group that's been helping us at
Yeah.
the CSP for so long. Just absolutely amazing activism, what's going on with those people.
And Weeds, a
Any more
massive
contact?
delivery.
Have you seen hide in their hair of these animals that...
Well, funny enough, my application was for the recreational application was ready to go in the morning that they raided us.
I see.
And so it had to go in the next day because the lawyer was attending the scene and just keeping an eye on everything that happened. So the contact has been that they've received the provincial application and then sent instructions for the next phase.
So have they given you permission to continue on until now?
No.
No?
No,
I don't know
that's...
if you're aware of what's going on at Stressed and Depressed. They were
I
in
did
queue.
hear you just say...
Yeah, they were in queue to get their provincial license, and one of the few remaining dispensaries that had non-government weed, and man, were they ever busy. So I went in there, it's got to be 3 weeks ago now, fought my way through the lineup, literally we're at a 420 at the height of 420 to get to the desk, but I wasn't going to wait in line. I just wanted to get to the desk and ask them a couple of questions about things. And they have their provincial license in hand, apparently. They've been told by provincial officials that they can continue to deplete the stock that they have for the last 3 weeks. And yeah, so I mean, it's all, I don't know what to think of all that. I mean, I'm glad that they're able to continue doing what they're doing for a little bit of time.
It was very generous of the CSU, if that is indeed the truth, because but
nice
it just,
of them. But why? At the same time, they're over. But you hadn't put your application in yet. But I thought that you were a little bit into that process.
Well, we have been. It's you don't just fill out one page and put it in. There's
Okay.
a lot of work that you got to do behind the scenes to.
So there'd been other
satisfy
contacts
things.
with the provincial authorities with respect to becoming a legal store before that. This was just another step in that thing.
Our lawyer was fully in contact with an official from CSU that knew full well that we were filling out all of the paperwork and that we were in the process, and that any day, it would have gone in sooner, but there had been a glitch in something and it ended up having to take an extra couple of days, and it just so happened. But what I know is it wouldn't have mattered anyways, Neil.
They were coming
because they went up to Highway 99 and he's had an application in for 15 months now.
Wow.
The mayor backs him up and even said in the newspaper that They've given him a development permit. They fully support everything that he's doing there, and yet he's waited 15 months. They went into grassroots medicinal. They've had an application in for, I'm not sure how long, maybe a year now. Same thing. So it doesn't matter that our application wasn't quite in. It doesn't
Right.
matter. We were in the process. All of the paperwork, like you got to go and you got to open up a bank account, and you got to get your GST number, your PST number. You got to get your business name. You got to do things like put in what your proposed signage is going to be. Put in your proposed hours. You got to give them your floor plans. Like there's a lot of work that goes into that.
Right.
And then there's still a lot of work that has to be done now that, you know, that it's gone into the next stage. But they are making it seem like the only option is to transition into this really failed system that they've put forward that is
by their own definition non-medical.
Yes.
Which
And
is
when
disgusting.
we opened 11 years ago, it was to address the failed government program at the time, which continued, like they've changed the name of it, but it's still a continual failure of their program that we still need to address.
They have never allowed for proper storefront access for people.
No.
You can walk into any drugstore 24 hours a day and get all kinds of dangerous pharmaceutical medicines, but for cannabis, you can't walk into a store and get what you want.
Not yet. That's coming down, like, you know, that'll be in their plans.
Well,
Once
5 years,
once
they
they
were
get
gonna-
all of us shut
They were
down.
going to address it 5 years down the road was when they were going to revisit medical cannabis.
Yes.
The gummies that they've got at 10 milligrams are not medical because 10 milligrams doesn't do nothing for people that need it for medical reasons. It's the right dose
Well,
for people that
not-
never tried it before.
Yeah.
And there's the odd person, I've met them too, that don't require much more than that. But
For some
for
people
most
at 10
people,
milligrams, that would be a week worth of medicine. They're very
for
lightweight,
novices for
and
sure,
they-
or some people like you say that are frail or,
Yeah.
you know, I get all that. But, you know, it's those other people that, you know, that 400 milligrams isn't quite, you know, getting them where they need to be to deal with the pain they're dealing with. And what are they going to do? You know, buying 10 milligram chocolate chunks, you know, $15 a piece, you know.
I did a little demo the other day and showed that, you know, like if you had a 10 milligram cookie and you needed a 200 milligram dose, now you need these 20 cookies. And each of those cookies was 130 calories. So that's 2,600 calories sitting in that pile just in chocolate
It's
chip
impossible.
cookies.
It's just not addressing the medical needs of people whatsoever.
No.
It's,
No. And so that's okay, because on the recreational market, they can deal with that.
Well, as
On the
long as they
medic-
were leaving, you know, having other access through other storefronts, fine. But, you know, when they shut them all down, then it's not okay. This is not okay.
Well, because on the medicinal end, that should still be allowed.
Yeah.
We need to have both avenues.
Yes.
We need people to be able to go and get safe recreation and make a good and healthy choice for themselves. But we also need the avenue for people to be able to go and get the medicine and care that they need, whether it is in a 2 milligram suppository, 5 milligram edible, or 1,000 milligram edible. Because like I could eat edibles all day long. I'm not going to get high. I'm going to get happy. I'm going to get chubby, but I'm not going to get like high, and I'm not looking for high.
Yeah.
When I eat something, I'm looking for relief.
If you're enjoying your day, that's high, in my opinion. If you're, you know,
Knees don't
if
hurt.
you don't hurt so bad that you can laugh at a joke and you can see, you know, something that takes your attention away, and you know, that's beautiful. That's high, in my opinion, and there's nothing wrong with high at all. They've made high into some bad thing, and I'm not sure how they did that. You know, high is something that's always been good in throughout our society, from high school to higher learning to Your Highness to high
Society, high school.
It's all good, and yet somehow being high is a bad thing. I think high is when your senses are heightened, not dulled. That it's like, wow, that's really cool music, and that's really cool sunset. I really get what you're saying. All those things, and that's not debilitating. That's enhancing. You know, can be, yeah. I mean, you can be impaired by cannabis if you're a novice user quite easily. It gets a little harder as you become a journeyman user of cannabis to become anywhere near impaired by it. And then it takes a lot more, and it takes different extreme circumstances. But for the most part, it's not impairing at all. It's a way to live in a world that could be very depressing if you pay attention to what's going on around you. Living in a body that by the time you're past your 40s hurts for sure. Just about all of us, It's rare when somebody hasn't got pains and stuff going on when they're in their 40s and beyond that. It just, trust me, it gets worse, but hopefully you get better at dealing with it. But to be denied medicine and to be blocked from access, I mean, there better be damn good reason. I talked about there better be damn good reason for putting people in cages. Like, we shouldn't be putting people in cages. It's very, very costly. We usually don't get a good return on it at all. And it's just completely immoral to take a human being and put them in a cage if they haven't just demonstrated that they're going to repeatedly do damage to people and their property, and they're not going to stop, so I guess we have to put them in a room by themselves. But short of that, we shouldn't be putting people in cages. But the other extreme is, we talk about, you wouldn't want to take candy from a baby. Well, I don't know about that. Babies shouldn't probably have candy. But to keep medicine from a sick person, what kind of a sicko does that? Who are these people that think that they should decide for us that this plant is dangerous and you shouldn't be taking that, and we're going to make sure if you do, you're harmed really badly to prove that you shouldn't have? It's so immoral. It's like so immoral. They are literally bullying the sick and suffering people in our societies to protect money interests so that they can have this plant worth thousands of dollars a pound. It boggles my mind that it isn't so plainly obvious that we all just stop doing what we're doing and demand that they get the hell out of those offices, and we put people in there that give a shit about being public servants, Sorry, I'm going on a little rant here. It's your time to speak, but I do get going every once in a while.
It's your show, Neil.
Well, and I use the show to get things off my chest, and sometimes at the expense of my guests, because I get to going on these little tangents about things, and really I want to hear more about your opinion on things than mine. But, all of it's relevant, and it's kind of why we're here. You've watched this since the beginning. It's been quite the evolution. 150 illegal dispensaries. Now I think we got 5 or 6, and all but 2 are in queue for government non-medical licenses. We're not done yet. The CSU is an evil opponent, but what are we going to do? Do you have any plans or ideas?
Well, the lawyer has asked that we don't come right out on social media talking about exactly what the plan is.
Okay.
But
can you talk about how much you hate the CSU?
Watch that video and you can see on my face how much I hate the CSU.
The most hated police force yet that I've ever witnessed.
But I can tell you this. If you go to 1182 Thurlow Street, there is someone in the lobby that is waiting to talk to you. If you want to help us, you want to help yourself, you possibly want to help get our medicine maybe back, then I suggest you just come on down and talk to the people in the lobby. If you have any reservations whatsoever about helping us and you want to talk to our lawyer, then come on Saturday. Okay. This Saturday and next Saturday, because he will be in the lobby and he will be answering people's questions and helping them understand how they can help us, if they can help us. And then we're prepared for those that want to move forward. We've got something coming down the pipe that it's an interesting strategy, and what it does is allows the patients to speak, because really they're the ones that are voting for us by choosing to come to our store, and this is about them. And so when we go forward, it's fully with patients forward, and doing everything that we can to preserve their access to cannabis.
Because there's a lot of people worried right now about access, for sure.
I know they are, and they need to speak up. They need to speak up to their mayor. wherever their mayor is, they need to speak up to their elected officials, their MLAs and their MPs. They got to speak up.
And to their doctors.
And to their doctors. And everybody needs to get onto that medical program, because they're trying desperately by saying, well, we'll look at this medical thing in 5 years.
Yeah.
Let's just focus on this recreational thing. What they're hoping is that there's going to be more and more and more people drop off because their needs aren't being met, and they'll start shopping at the stores, and maybe their needs will be met, but then they can say, well, this program isn't even necessary anymore because there used to be this many people, and now they're all over there on the recreational market. See, it was all about recreation. There was no medicine in this.
They're all going back to the black market mostly. They're not going to go to the government stores.
Well, no, people are going to the government stores. My kids go to the government store.
The black market's thriving. You kids are going.
Only when they've run out of the stuff that mom's given them. But they have gone, and and people are trying it because they should. I think people should try, because they need to know the difference. And they need to know whether.
I just hate to see that people get any money.
Well, of course, but
until we're an inclusive society and there's no criminal penalties for pot, I don't want to give them any money. But I do agree with you that people, we need to see the distortion of it all.
We always said, open up lots and lots of dispensaries across this country so that people can shop in their own neighborhoods. And if they want to go a neighborhood over because those people are treating them better, then that's what they should be able to do. Not just have a couple of stores meeting people's needs, because we can't meet people's needs the way we used to on this new reality.
Not at all.
Because we've got so many people that are lined up needing their medicine. They used to go to this store and that store and this store and that store and pick up their $5 joints every day and get their little brownie and stuff like that. And now all of these people are displaced, and they're going to places like Stressed and Depressed and trying to get in on the last few deals. They're coming to places like us. It's people are frantic, and now we're going into winter. And the last thing that I've ever wanted to have is people lined up out the door in the cold, because that's not conducive to good health. That makes people more sick. They need to be able to just come in, quickly get their needs met, and go back and do whatever they need to do. People have to wait in line for 10 or 15 minutes. That's hard on people.
10 or 15 minutes.
And maybe
I've got the CSP where we have people that line up, not many from 6 in the morning, but there's lots that get there hours before noon.
I know that.
I'm not happy about it. I've never been happy about it. We are trying to respond to the city's motion, just trying to find a storefront to rent. I've got a number of different tentacles out there. We're on the cusp, there's some good leads now. And we're going to rent a place, and then we're not going to have that lineup out there anymore. But we're probably still going to have lineups, because what we're going to open is a CSP combined with a dispensary, so that people that qualify, that have low income, that will become members of the CSP. I don't want to cap it. We're doing over 300 right now, and we pretty much satisfy the huge lineup that comes there. I think that if we have a storefront, and we're already getting more donations already from people, we've got that going on even better. So we'll see if we have to cap it at all, but maybe 400 or 500 members, we might have to cap it. It would all depend on what we can generate. I think that I'm giving the CSP update right now. I'm a little early for that. But that's kind of what's going on. But I agree with you that we shouldn't have people lining up like that. People supported 150 dispensaries in this city. They were all doing well, and now there's 15 government stores, and none of them are doing well in the city. There's just a handful of non-government stores, and they're all busy like crazy, like I'm sure you guys are, and it's Stressed and Depressed is, and the Blue Door is, and there's a couple others that are in queue for their provincial licenses, but until they get that, they're selling the weed that people want, obviously. So here we have public servants. Why aren't they aware of that? Why aren't they having a look at that? Why aren't they realizing that all these thousands of people want this access, not this access? They obviously don't care about us. I don't know why. It's an open question.
They got stock in those other companies.
Yeah, it's such a corrupt scheme. Like, wow.
You know, Neil, I really knew it was corrupt when I was reading the newspaper about the bust up at Grassroots. It was either Grassroots or Highway 99, and the officer that was planted outside the door, when a patient came up, they said, "See the skies open." And the police officer is actually directing people to the legal cannabis store in that city. And that's where the corruption
Oh,
is.
it's obviously so corrupt.
So
It's so corrupt. You know, our mantra of legalize and regulate was all about stop spending our tax dollars on, you know, going after people for weed. Like, this is obscene. And they haven't stopped spending our tax dollars at all. They've increased, and they got the whole new CSU unit, for example, and the federal government has more money for enforcement.
So let's talk a little bit about, you know, so they come in and they do a raid, they steal all our stuff, then they go back to their office and they handwrite out an inventory. Handwritten.
I see. They don't do it in the store.
Didn't do it in the store.
They take it all away and then they write it up.
They didn't do it on a spreadsheet where, like, you know, that it typed in. They hand wrote it out. And so when you're talking about, you know, the labor intensive part of this, like, I know how long it would take for me to assign a staff to have done that. Now it needs to be put into a spreadsheet so that they can start to do their calculations to come up with whatever fine they're going to give us.
Because they're going to base a fine based on they think what the value is of what they took from you.
Yeah. Apparently they use that as the formula. So whatever the retail value was of whatever they seize, they double it. I'm hearing they double it. And so that, you know, now you've paid for a product. You've paid to get it packaged into all of your stuff, and now you have to pay double the retail value.
You lose that stuff, that product, and you got to pay a fine on top of it.
So, like, you know, so this is how they try to shut you down, because, like, that's, you know, that's a big owie when you lose that much product, right? And we're just fortunate that we've been around for 11 years. We have excellent relationships with our vendors and suppliers, and they all just, you know, just showed up. And everybody just got on Team Dispensary, and we got it all packaged up, and we were able, you know, when I looked out the window, Dana had said, like, we're going to be open at 4:20. At 4 o'clock, I looked out the window, and there was already people starting to encroach on the neighbor's sidewalk. And I said, we just have to open now. We can't wait for the next load to come and make the menu a little bit better. We just have to open the door because, you know, people are waiting now. And, you know, so that was good. And so it was a really dark day, but it was a really great day as well, because now people are mad.
Yeah.
people are ready
Anything
to
powerful
speak out
has
a little bit
positive
more
and
now.
negative to it,
Yeah.
and these are powerful events that happen.
Yeah.
I know when they raided the stock market, some of the people there were very upset. They were, because it's an indigenous dispensary, and they really feel passionately about that. And there's like, oh, well, they just messed with the wrong Indians, you know. and
I've been chatting with Vicky, and I believe that is true.
Yes, they're really stirring up people, and I want people to get stirred up.
Yeah.
I want people to realize that this is not normal, this is not okay, this is absolutely an atrocity. People are really being harmed. It could be your mom, it could be your aunt, it could be somebody in your family that now can't get the medicine that they need, and now they're going to be suffering because of it. All because of government corruption, all because of greed, of putting profit over patients and people. And there is no excuse for it. There's no justification for it. It's simply a plant like any other plant, except it's less dangerous than most other plants, way more beneficial. But the cost of producing it is not much more than just about any other crop that you want to produce, especially when you're talking orchids or heirloom tomatoes, or I mentioned saffron, where you need a whole football field worth of flowers to get just the 1 pound of it. You can grow cannabis fairly easily if we were living in a reasonable world, which we deserve, and we better fight for to get, because we had people take bullets so that we could be in this position to demand freedom, and if we had freedom, our public servants would be shouting from the rooftops that they've got this amazing plant that is going to help people, and holy smokes, they're going to make sure everybody gets easy access to it, and it's free for anybody who can't afford it, and really cheap for anybody else in all of its forms, because there's no justification for it not being cheap. And if it's really beneficial, then our public servants should work to make it cheaper, not more expensive. And with what they've done with cannabis is just such a glaring example of huge corruption here. We can't stand for this. I mean, we can't. And medical people are suffering, and I hope that people are getting really mad about it. And if you get mad enough to write a letter, well, that's going to do a lot, and it really does do something.
Yeah.
And so write a letter, and if you feel like doing more than that, well, write the letter first, and then see how you feel. And you know what? You're going to come up with another idea, and you're going to make a phone call, and you're going to talk to somebody, and then you're going to go to their office, and you're going to sit outside their office till you get an answer. And this is what we need people to do, is just not take this anymore. This is too much. We got to stop what's going on.
The trouble is, Neil, all of these people are sick people. And they need to be at appointments, and they need to
Well, that's
be
why I'm
caring
saying
for their
you need to
family,
do it
and
for
the
your
little bit of
grandma.
energy that they
And
have,
you need
they
to do it for your auntie, right?
When
you
you
need to
can,
do
yeah.
it for your family member that's going to be suffering here, because it's going to touch all of our families. And I love what you're saying, because I said that, your aunt or your grandmother or somebody in your family is going to be hurt by this. And you're so right. Those people have a real hard time just dealing with day-to-day things when they're in pain and suffering. People that aren't in suffering, they can see that and get angry about it and do something, because we need to do something. Being just angry isn't enough. No. You got to be angry to the point of doing something. It takes a lot to write that letter to start with, but you'll find out that it flows, and then it's not so hard. And then once you've written it and once you've sent it, there's something that happens after that really makes a person alive and makes a person know that they're part of the solution, and there's things that we can do. I know it's a powerful thing, and so I really encourage people to do that on behalf of their family members and the rest of the people in society that are being really harmed by these greedy bastards who have no respect for the veterans that took bullets so that we could be free and have public servants. They have no respect for that, and that really, really angers me. And I know anger is not the best way to proceed on things, but below the surface for me, I'm a positive, optimistic kind of. I try to balance it with being a realistic person, but I pretty much want to laugh, dance, sing, and find a way to enjoy my life through this process. But I'm really driven by anger. That's what happened to me when I quit my job after a few years of volunteering at the 420 rallies. That when I learned the real truth in doing the renovations at the Herb School, I got so angry and I had to quit my job. And I've never actually woken up a day less angry than I was that day, and I cried my eyes out that day. But I channel it and I use it, and I get to feel like I'm making a difference, because I've worked myself into having this show and being a part of putting rallies together and other things that we can do. I channel that anger, and I try not to let that anger be the face of what I'm about when I'm dealing with people, because I want to talk reason to people, and I want to talk on a one-to-one human level with the people that I'm talking to. And so, but really it is anger that drives me, and I think that's okay, because it is what it is, and it has to be. And please get angry about $2,000 pounds of a herb that could help you live an enjoyable life. Like, who the fuck takes medicine from people? Who the fuck would do that? Like, how do they live with themselves? I don't get how these CSU people live with themselves.
Well, apparently that man that I was in that little video with, apparently earlier than me getting there, he had been telling everybody there that he understands. He has family members that use cannabis.
Is that right?
Yeah, and I made it clear.
He must be a very conflicted human being.
Right. I made it very clear to him that he clearly doesn't understand, because if you understand, you would never have taken a job like that.
Some people are soulless.
Well, I don't, and in this case, I don't believe that he's soulless. I believe that.
Well, then I hope he's having a hard time
I believe that I
sleeping.
touched him, because that's why he reached out to touch me.
If he's not
and he asked me
soulless,
if I was okay.
He's having a hard time sleeping. He's having a hard time. He's conflicted in his brain, and you should stop and quit your job, sir. And Anybody
Neil,
that's
yeah.
involved in the enforcement of these ridiculous prohibitions and is taking medicine from sick people is causing that type of suffering from people, good, harmless people are suffering, and you're going to be part of that? Stop it. Stop it. And get a different job. And one where you give back to society, and nobody likes what you're doing.
See, the thing is like we were treated like we were a bad recreational store. Okay?
Yeah.
So recently in the city, the police went in and they raided a whiskey bar on Commercial Drive. Do you know anything about that?
I did hear about
Okay.
something to do with that.
So apparently, if you want to sell good cocktails and make good cocktails, you need a variety of flavors of your different alcohols. And apparently the BC Liquor Distribution Branch only has like a very small handful of bottom shelf kind of alcohols. And most alcohol establishments have illegal alcohol to make their craft cocktails. Okay? So something happened that they got targeted somehow, because you don't hear very often that they've gone in and raided an alcohol establishment for their illegal alcohol.
It's rare.
But what they did do is they went in and they took everything that wasn't BC Liquor Distribution Branch off the shelf, and they cataloged it, and then they left with it. But the store was allowed to remain open, and they just got a sign that said, for the next 30 days, this sign has to remain here that you had illegal alcohol for sale. It's essentially the same sign that they're putting on cannabis stores when it says this sign has to remain here for 30 days. It doesn't say you have to close. It just says this sign, you don't tamper with this sign if you have one of these signs. Sometimes they put it on the outside of your store. Sometimes they put it on the inside of your store. Sometimes they don't put it on your store. It just depends on who happens to show up that day and, if they have a sign, I guess. I don't know.
Well,
It's arbitrary and it's ridiculous. It's a waste of our taxpayer dollars. It's harmful to people that are sick and dying. It's, we've, when our 880 East Hastings store we chose to close it so that we didn't get contempt of court charges, and decided to make the best of our space because we've got our lease and stuff like that, and we're all about harm reduction, and we've been in the cannabis harm reduction world all this time, but now we've decided our bigger picture has always been about all drugs and that prohibition is harmful, drug war is terrible, and so we started getyourdrugstested.com.
yeah.
And that's very quickly been endorsed by Vancouver Coastal Health,
Right.
and the BC Centre for Disease Control, and they have started allowing us to give for free supplies that they are providing us for free, needles, cookers, push sticks, tourniquets, the little sharps containers, and we've added socks and granola bars and apples and oranges.
Nice.
And a couple of other little things. We've got safer sex supply
Yeah.
there as well, and so we're it's just one of the things that we're doing to keep addressing this problem, because that's addressing the opioid crisis. And where I'm going with that one is the letter that came to us from Vancouver Coastal Health said that this service that we're providing is in response to a provincial health emergency that has been declared in our province in 2016. And so when we're serving cannabis for people, we're serving under that same umbrella, that this is harm reduction, this is overdose prevention. They don't understand the connection yet, but that's okay. We planted seeds, and we're watering them, and and eventually people will all start to understand how cannabis does relate to a harm reduction center,
For sure.
With,
Yeah,
you know,
people
with helping make
on the
people make
streets
better
know,
choices.
like
Yeah.
all the social workers, they all know.
Absolutely. Yeah.
The only reason that there's pushback and resistance is to protect profits. It's not about protecting people.
Yeah. Yeah, they want them
You're going to
buying
be
from
able
them.
to have cannabis available to people as well, I would imagine, under that same authority that you've just mentioned, because it is a harm reduction tool.
Yes, but
And
right
that's
now,
the city's motion is part of that as well.
right now,
So-
actually, we just supply your Cannabis Substitution Project and the one going on with Sarah Blythe at the Overdose Prevention Society.
Right.
High hopes.
But I'm saying that could evolve from where you are into that
Absolutely.
same thing. That's the direction that I think is
It-
desired and probably will happen.
It absolutely will be going in that direction, but right now we have, we've got to get all these other drugs under our belt first, and get that little center running the way that it is, and then maybe we can start doing something about substitution within that building. But right now, it's we just don't have the services for that.
Right. But it should
And
be
so-
part of the services, and it eventually probably will be.
So people go and they get their substitution in other places, and we just heavily support those activities, knowing that our good is coming through in other places, and that we can direct people to that. We can direct people to our store so that they can go make purchases there. One of the things that we did for our members was this little, sorry for the inconvenience card.
Right.
So if you stop to get your drugs tested at 880 East Hastings, they can give you a 10% off card for when you get up to the store.
Cool.
And that'll just help you pay for your parking and maybe your bus or something like that.
And when you go to the store, there will be somebody in the lobby that you can talk to about how we can help.
Yes.
And what's the address again on Thurlow?
1182 Thurlow,
Just off of Davie.
just off of Davie, behind the Starbucks.
Yeah.
And St. Paul's Hospital.
Very good.
So,
Well, gee whiz, thanks, Dorie, for so much for coming on the show, but for all the work you've done over these years, and obviously yet to come. You're at the forefront of all of this. You've been the sort of quiet little mouse, almost, not really, but behind the scenes more than anything, but really a driving force in setting standards and maintaining a very, very respectable dispensary that should be modeled and licensed by the government. And that's what should have happened, and it's still what should happen. And I think it's going to happen in the city of Vancouver. I think they're going to license what you're doing at the medicinal cannabis dispensary, not the new provincial store, but the medicinal side, because I don't think anybody addresses better the opioid crisis with respect to allowing cannabis, like the city said they would license, more than you guys do. So I really hope that happens as well. But thank you so much for your heart and your passion and all the energy that you've put into, guiding this industry. It's been self-regulated for all these years, and a fabulous job of being self-regulated, and you were the real force behind all of that. And I know that, and now our audience knows that if they didn't before. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
Anything you wanted to say that I didn't give you a chance to say?
well, thank you also
welcome.
for your continued effort of bringing forward the issues here.
I wasn't fishing for a compliment.
No, no, but I'll give you a little one. And thanks for continuing to show up, because it's important. And because if we don't keep showing up, pretty soon there's going to be nobody standing up and with the flowers and the love. And,
the corporate agenda is not one that we want to have established here. They will charge us, more than we can afford for medicine we can't even trust.
And I'll tell you, Neil, the reason why their pot is no good is because there isn't the heart in it.
That's right.
Their intention when they get out of bed in the morning is to make money.
Yeah, exactly.
And when we get out of bed in the morning, our intention is to do good in the world.
Yeah.
And we have to make a little bit of money so that we can keep our doors open.
Well, that's how you do good.
But boy, we do a lot of good with the money that we do have.
Exactly.
And we spread it as far as we can to as many organizations as we can. And we'll continue to do so. But the last message would be, if you're shopping at the dispensary, you are supporting getyourdrugstested.com, because there is there is no
Yeah.
you know, money being generated
That's right,
down there,
exactly.
and when you support the dispensary, you're supporting that public service.
And you're
which I-
supporting the Cannabis Substitution Project, and you're supporting the High Hopes Foundation. We wouldn't have been able to survive the way we have without you guys, absolutely 100%. One of our main donators that kept us going. We're now a force, and you guys helped us be that force for sure. So thanks, Dorie.
You're welcome.
We'll see
Thank
you down the
Neil.
road real soon.
You will.
Very cool.
Thank you.
All right. Tell you that cannabis saved their life. You know what's going on? We're bagging up stuff for the Cannabis Substitution Project. These are the care packs that we give out. We give out about somewhere between 160 to 200 of these packs every time that we're here, twice a week.
And what's in the packs?
The packs would have, typically there's gummy, candy there, a cap, a joint. We have these other caramel types of gummies. But unfortunately, because of the city's clampdown on dispensaries and the transition to the non-medical legal government stores, the access to cannabis edibles has really been reduced. So we had 150 dispensaries here, none of them government stores, all of them medical to a degree, all of them with edibles. And that was just the marketplace, you know, the demand and then the supply coming to meet the demand. And the city decided to interfere with that, and now there's people really struggling to find what they need out there.
It's hard for
and
me
to the
to
point
get
where we
edibles
have
and afford them.
180 people going to line up here today in the rain for hours
I know, I've
to
seen
get,
it this
you know,
morning.
a bag like that. There's a great need in this city that's not being met.
It made me feel different. And probably where I went off the rails was getting into the acid and the speed and heroin. But fortunately for me, I didn't go overboard. And after doing a week run one time, getting sick and diarrhea, I turned my life over to God, became a Christian, but I still smoked weed. And now I've had 3 surgeries, and I don't take meds.
So it actually gives me pain relief, as well as helps me with epilepsy, as well as anxiety, panic attacks. Yeah.
I'd rather smoke weed and eat edibles than go back to pills.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pills kill.
Yeah.
Weed doesn't.
I don't depend on buying pharmaceuticals and street drugs as much anymore because I take care of my physical pain with medical marijuana and the edibles that are provided for me.
Cannabis helps me a lot.
It's really ironic that police would waste their efforts on edibles, marijuana edibles, when there's actually people dying from opiate crisis. I don't see anybody dying from eating edibles. I see people being well and not taking opiates because they feel better, they don't need to take it.
It keeps me calm and keeps me pain-free.
Awesome, thank you. The cannabis helps me eat with my meds.
Yeah.
Because I have a hard time eating with my meds. So I eat like gummy gels, Billy Bombs before I eat, and then I'm able to like eat a whole meal.
That pink is healed.
Yeah.
Scab's gone.
Yeah,
It's 4
from
weeks.
the oil.
This arm was broken. Like that, the one package, you've got enough. You've got enough of it. It doesn't take an endless amount, just that one dose per week or day or whatever it takes you. And I'll put it down. I'll put it down and say, I don't need it anymore. I'm fine.
No, it's a nightmare just getting housing. I use it, I eat it, I smoke it, and I use the cream for my arthritis.
Now it gives people an alternative to what other people would give you as a bad button, and this is the right button to get. It's been with us for thousands of years. Yeah. And now because of political complications, we can't deal with it as mature adults. So this is a healing band-aid for us economically. If people will just free up the situation and allow the garden to grow.
My husband Doug and I are the owners of the S&M Medicinal Sweet Shop over in Gibsons, BC. We're a seed-to-table edibles company, so with that, I grow all of the cannabis that goes into all of our edible products that Doug makes. We started the company originally for Doug. Doug was on narcotics for 25 plus years. 5.5 of that was oxycodone. He really needed to get off of it, so he decided to make edibles. Yeah. So we started making edibles, and he slowly weaned himself off of methadone.
I'm using it medically for 44 years because of my heart.
I smoke sativa, and I find sometimes it just gives me a little
bit of energy.
She can't walk. She has diabetes and her legs swell up so bad and sores. She can't walk. I can. Yeah. So I come all the way from New Westminster and get this, take it home, and give most of it to her.
Edibles in this city are unaffordable for low-income people. The taxing of medical cannabis is wrong. Please don't tax our medical cannabis. We need it. It saves my life. It saves their life. And it'll save somebody from opiate death. How many? 230 people. That is the biggest lineup we had so far this year.
To help people with offsetting the use of street drugs because they kill people. The lack of access is definitely causing deaths in this city. So shame on the government, shame on our municipal government for not allowing the free access to medical dispensaries and edibles, which should be happening.
So thank you, man. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much for saying that.
Yeah, shame on the CSU and shame on Horgan for unleashing that on our communities and shutting down these dispensaries. Hopefully, because of the efforts of the CSP, we can, and what that resulted in the city passing their motion, we can revive some medical dispensaries to address the opioid crisis and reestablish that not just in Vancouver, but in cities across Canada. So that would be very good. Coming up, there's not a lot. We just had the Saskatoon Prairie Harvest Medicinal Cup there. That's now over. That was a hoot apparently. The Friendly Cup lived up to its reputation, and they pulled off a great event there from all reports, and I did get to watch some of it live online. On tomorrow, actually, in Nova Scotia, there's two different court cases going on. Chris Enns has his Lower Water Street at the Supreme Court, and 9:30 in the morning. Go there and support that fella there and all his efforts to get access to medical cannabis in Nova Scotia. And Heidi Chartrand as well in Annapolis in a courtroom at 9:30 in the morning, and she'd like to have as many supporters out as possible as well. These are important times, and we really do need to support these court efforts to try and get our rights back. It's terrible that we have to fight our government for it through the courts, but that's what's going on. And it's a real opportunity for people to be heard and to be seen as supporting this very important cause. I want to thank my guests today, Jen Nelson coming in for the 420 session, to Jerry Martin for the Martin Medical Moment, and especially to Dorie Dempster and all of her work with the medicinal cannabis dispensary over the last decade plus, and how she's helped to shape things and guide things. I was very privileged to have her on the show. I want to thank my producer Neil and Cannabis Culture for allowing me to use this space. Coming up on Pot TV, of course, we have on Monday Carly Marley and BC Bud Gal with the 420 Lifestyle Show, where they tell you all the things fun going on about cannabis, and it's always a hoot and very informative and entertaining as well as educational with those two. And then on Tuesdays, of course, it's me with the THC show, Truth, Hope, and Change. On Wednesdays, it's Under the Influence with Greg Williams and his take on what's going on in the cannabis world. And on Fridays, Jeremiah Vandermeer has Cannabis Culture News Live, and definitely bring you up to speed with regular guests and what's current going on in the cannabis world. We also have High Noon with Boss Lissa. They've done their 100th show now, so that's in the tank. They smoked 110 joints on their 100th show, so congratulations.
10% proved it was safe.
They proved 110% it was safe. Yes, they did. As we do always here on all of the shows and in all of our rallies and everywhere else and everything we do, we demonstrate and we prove that cannabis is not only fun, but it's safe as well. And there should certainly be no interference from our public servants with respect to the use of something that is so safe as what cannabis is. So thanks to everyone out there for watching. Have as much fun as you can changing the world. We'll see you next week.
Are we still banned on YouTube? I'm Marijuana Man. Welcome to From Under the Influence. If they had weed, guaranteed they would make money. That's the only conclusion I can come to, is they don't have any weed. Because people are still going to buy it, for God's sakes. People actually like weed and want to buy weed. And a huge number of people have no choice but to come and buy it from you, and still, you can't make money? Holy fuck. Now what? What are you going to do to us now? When I was even at a very young age, go, wow, like, why would this be illegal? It is so much fun.
Outlawing laughter and feeling good?
Yeah,
What?
laughing. Thanks for joining us. See you next time. Peace. And fun.
Hi there, welcome to the 420 Lifestyle Show. I'm Carly Marley. She's taking a dab. Thanks.
We can play the Sycamoose video.
Oh yes, Sycamoose video. Let's play the Sycamoose video.
Yeah, so that's my home. That's like all over the place, I guess.
It helps the speaker lead his audience into the scene he describes.
Oh, I'm rolling out the fattest joint I could possibly fit in this paper. If it was any bigger, it would explode.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi.
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 Hi. It's high noon here in the studio.
Look at it. Look at the bud.
Right there. And it was just like so many people, and I was like, "Whoa, this is amazing!" I was like, "I have to cross it."
Acronyms, baby.
I love
So
how
you paid
they're
$8
like,
for half a pencil.
I love.
just put it out there.
I know that we gon' make it.